Hello. Hello, everyone. Let me know if you see me. All right, let's just see here. Okay, I see Elizabeth, Lady B, and Debbie is there. Awesome, Tammy as well. Okay, drop a hello if you see me. Let me know you're with me. Say a hello. Hi, Sherry. I see the hi. Kelly, sees Sylvia. Awesome. Awesome. Put your name below if you're just popping in here. And again, whether you're here or on YouTube, give me a hello and let me know you're with me. Awesome. Okay, I see 10 eyeballs have joined me now. Awesome, awesome. All right. So this is, I see Michelle, Wanda, Kelly. Awesome. So this is live number 129. Crazy. 100, almost 130 lives now, which is really, really awesome. And so if you are new here or you're an old member, you're welcome. Either way, we are closing in on, I think, 16,000 members now. We're at 15.9 thousand members. So thank you for being a part of this community. If you are new here, this is the Fierce Women community where we sculpt powerful bodies and champion mindsets, which reminds me, I have to tag everyone. I'm live now. Sorry, I know I have to tag people here. Okay. Okay, perfect. So first of all, if you guys saw my post yesterday, thank you to everyone who has wished my mom a happy birthday. She wants me to send a message to all of you and say thank you so much for all of the birthday wishes. It was wonderful. She will come in and read them all. I told her, I'm like, Mom, come in and you got to read all the comments. So she really appreciates all the positive comments. So thank you so much for wishing her a happy birthday. And of course, this topic again, so the topic is 5 ways to better understand fat gain and how to reduce it. Okay, so I know everyone wants to learn how to reduce fat, is always interested in learning more. Hi, Jennifer, good to see you. And Kathleen and Wanda, awesome. So this is going to be a really popular topic. I know that. But first, let's start with some wins. So first of all, if Angelina Everett is on here, I know she was going to try to make it on. I just want to give her a shout out. Angelina Everett joined the transformation program on Monday. So give her lots of whoop whoop, because I know that she's really committed to her health. She's partially working with a trainer already at a gym, but she really wants to understand nutrition, which is something you're going to really hear me speak about in today's live, because just working out is not your only key for success in truly changing your body composition. So she was just like, I need to understand my nutrition better. And that she also wants to understand why she's eating what she's eating, because she has certain meal plans. I believe her coach actually gives her this plan. But I always say there's a big difference if one day that coach is not there anymore. Can she understand how to eat for herself? That's the biggest thing I always talk about. So she's just like, yes, I could sell my coach in the gym, but I'm still going to work with you. So Angelina, super proud of you for really putting your health at the forefront. So give her lots of hearts. Hi, Marcella. Good to see you. Esther Rose and Kimberly and Tammy and Yvette. Lots of people joining in. Awesome. Also wanted to give a shout out to Rosanance Blondell Timmerman. She did post her win post last week, but she doesn't know this week's, like this Friday when she did her metric wins again. So she's actually dropped. She's in her 2nd to 3rd week of her program, of the transformation program, and she's lost now 19.4 inches and another 2.5 inches off her belly. We're going to talk about belly fat today. And so she's lost 5 inches off her belly within a couple weeks of the transformation program. And I know she keeps saying, it's amazing the stuff you learn about nutrition, because it is coming down to a lot of nutrition that will change what happens in your body. So super proud of you, Rosanance. I know you're just starting a transformation program, but really great results. Wanda says, wow, you go girl, Rosanance. Awesome. Thanks, Wanda. Hi, Jen. Hi, Ariel. Awesome. And Yvette Jones. Okay, so I also have a lot of amazing wins to celebrate for the FFF ladies, but I'm not going to go into the specific details yet because we have something special coming down the line for all our FFF ladies. This is their 7th week of their 8-week program, and we're going to celebrate their wins bigger next week. But if you haven't seen the Monday post of our FFF posts about some of the results they've gotten in the program, you can drop FFF below and we'll tag you on that post. I think we had some Yvonne dropping her blood pressure. She used to be on high blood pressure. I know, Kathleen, you're on here. You were dropping a lot of inches. Tracy says she felt like a new person. So that was a great post. If you want to see that post, put FFF. And I won't go into specific wins for them yet because we have something special coming down the line next week. Okay. Yes. Wanda, we see the FFF. Hi, Tina. Hi, Isa and Kat. Good to see you. And Annie, lots of people jumping in. Awesome. And Patty. Okay. So, and also if you are wanting to learn more about any one of our programs, we have about 4 different routes right now. And yeah, and some things are changing within our programs, but anyways, if you want to learn more about programs where we're gearing it to drop fat off your body and increase muscles, particularly belly fat is a big focus for me. Drop programs below if you want to learn more about our programs. Okay. All right. So let's dive into it. Hi, Kat and Cindy Hutchinson and Kimberly. Yes. Awesome. We see the FFF and we'll tag you on that post. Awesome. So let's dive into it. First of all, let's go into some general background on fat first, okay? So the biggest thing is to understand that we all naturally need fat, right? We actually do need fat. So it's not like, it's not to say like, no, don't have any fat, because there is roles that your fat has in your body. I'm going to give you percentages, which I did in another live before, but if you don't know what that looks like, that's something that maybe you can look into or whatnot. But generally speaking, right, like, everyone should have a little bit of fat on them. If you're below 20% body fat, you're pretty lean. And obviously heading into lower like 18, 17%, those would be competitors kind of ranges. If you're below 20%, you're really quite lean. That is good. And for most people, naturally, that's not easy. That has to take a lot of intentional effort. And it's possible. And for some that are just naturally genetically that way, that's awesome, but that's not most people. Okay. Now, the natural fat ranges you should sit in, that's like a general healthy, you look good, look lean and still healthy, but not like competitor ready, is usually between 20 to 25%. If you're in that range, you're pretty good. It's overall pretty good. Some people like lower 20s, some people like maybe just a little bit up on the 24, 25% range. Okay. But if you're from 25 to 30%, you are going to be a little bit obviously curvier and everything. I would say you're in kind of in that range where I wouldn't say you're super healthy, but I would say it's not bad. You might still be careful around some health conditions that can come about if it's a little bit on the near like 28, 29, 30. But, some of the fat percentages is individual preference. Like some people legitimately like to be just curvier, right? And some people don't. So this is a little bit of individual preference. I would say 2025, you're good. 25 to 30, maybe individual preferences and different things like that. But if you are above, Sherry, I'm fat. Sherry, you're so funny. Sherry did my 21-day anti-inflammation program, but you've improved so much. Okay, Sherry. So now if you're above 30% in body fat, I would say that's not healthy, and that's something you definitely want to drop because there's a lot of metabolic issues that will come about from above 30%. And it doesn't matter. It does matter where you store it, which is something I'm going to get into. But like in general, too much fat is going to produce a lot of negative effects in your body. So for those of you who've done tests or things like that, and you're in like the 28, 29, maybe 30, you're starting to get there, you're above 30, you definitely want to look at reducing fat percentages. If you're 20%, you're like, I want to get lower in fat, like some of you that I've met and are competitors or things like that, cool, but definitely that's a little bit of a different protocol than someone trying to lose 30% body fat to 25. If you're 20%, you want to lose to 17%, that's a different ball game. And then you definitely need a coach who knows what they're doing. It's not all the same, okay? There's similar principles, but they're not all the same, okay? Now, how actually, with a show of hands, everyone watching, tell me where you want to sit in percentage fat. So tell me, like, you want to get to what? You want to get to 20% body fat. You want to get to 25% body fat. What range do you guys want on here? How much fat percentage do you want? Hi, Rosalind. Hi, Joanne. Hi, Lynn. Hi, Laura, Dagma. Okay, so put below what is the percentage fat you want. Okay, while you do that, I'm going to talk about why it is still important to have some fat. Okay, a little bit. Okay, because we still need some fat. So fat is really important because it does store a little bit of calories to help you, like in times when you don't have as much food or you're really sick and can't eat, right? You know, thank goodness you have a little bit of fat on your body because like that's what it burns off, right? So it's a bit of a survival mechanism. I would say in our North American culture, you're rarely going to run into a situation where you have no food. So yeah, that's maybe not as much, but still your body could get really sick. And in those times, it may need to go off of a little bit of fat stores, which is important, okay? So I see lots coming in, 20% Jennifer, 25% for Aviva, 20 to 23 cat. Good, awesome, lifestyle, exactly. Kathy, 18 to 20%. Okay, so you want really quite low, Kathy, under 30% Wanda, good, so more lifestyle. 20, 25, good, Kimberly, so that's like a general healthy, sustainable range. May 18 to 20. So May, are you a competitor? So it depends if you're naturally leaner, then maybe 18, 20 is easier. Below 20 is usually harder and is like moving into the competition realms. But some people can naturally do it. Their body's metabolism allow them to do that, right? So Sherry says, just belly be gone, no numbers needed for me. Yeah, Sherry, and we're going to talk about that. So for you, the belly being gone though would still be to drop below 30%, because usually when you have a lot of the belly, it's usually indicated you're above 30%, right? And Kimiko, when I was in my 30s, I was at 15%. I thought that was normal for me. Now I'm at 18.6 with pockets of fat. So I feel like I should be better, but no. Yeah, but Kimiko, your body type. So this is why I always go, because I know Kimiko, she did the 21-day program. Her natural body type is an ectomorphic. So very, very, very lean. Her body naturally just like keeps super, super lean. And so your pockets of fat, again, we're going to talk about it too. It depends where it is situated, because you could be lean, but you have fat situated in certain areas. That's indicative that it's not healthy, and we need to get that down, right? So awesome. So I see a lot of different responses. That's why I said everyone's fat preference is different. So you just have to decide for yourself what your fat preference is, but knowing what's generally healthy ranges is good too. All right, so why is fat important? So not only for a bit of storage, but your fat actually, it controls a lot of your metabolism. So I had mentioned before, even in last live, that there is a hormone called adiponectin that's released from your fat cells, and that adiponectin actually regulates your metabolism. And so you actually want some healthy fats in your body, because if you don't, you could also impact the metabolism and things can slow down. So having some healthy fats is good. And I mentioned as well that having healthy fats in your body impacts a lot of nutrition absorption in your body as well, right? We know there are some that are fat soluble vitamins that can only be absorbed by fat. So the one thing I want all of you guys to understand is I think there's certain reasons. If you're competing and you're getting onto stage, I totally understand. But we also know that's for a season. But for example, if you were too lean, not most women here is not that age, but you would have a hard time to get pregnant, right? You know, just because your body needs the fat to be able to get pregnant. So there's certain things that you like. Having fat is not like the worst thing, it's just having it in a healthier range, okay? So the thing is, let's keep on the background side of things. There's two types of fat. I talked about this before. I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but there's brown fat. We talked about this in one of my lives before, and white fat. Brown fat is metabolically active. It is different under a microscope. There's a lot more mitochondria within it. And the purpose of brown fat is to create thermogenesis, heat, and create heat without needing to shiver. So, people who live in cold environments, that's why there's those cold baths and stuff like that. They talk a lot about creating more brown fat. Brown fat is likely to be more on like the collarbone area, closer to your spine, things like that. And little kids have a lot of brown fat, which makes them very metabolically active. Okay. So, but my focus is not going to be brown fat today, okay? Because most people's concern is actually not brown fat. If they have brown fat, they'd be like, yay, I'm happy I have brown fat. Most people's concern is the second type, which is white fat, okay? So white fat is actually yellow in the body. So don't know why I didn't call it yellow fat, but it should be. Anyway, so it's white fat is where it's more plentiful in the body. That is where a lot of it accumulates. Okay. So what is the job of white fat? Sorry, I see lots of people coming in. Kelly, Charlotte, Emily, Tracy, Cynthia. Hi. And so, yes, so the role of white fat is to store energy. And again, I mentioned this, produce hormones that are secreted into the bloodstream that helps a little bit with your metabolism, right? So kind of going back to the white fat. So like a little bit of white fat, again, having that adiponectin, it actually helps you to become more sensitive to insulin, and your muscles to more sensitive to nutrient uptake. Okay, so it helps you decrease your risk of like diabetes and heart disease. So that's why a little bit of fat is actually good. No fat is actually not healthy. A little bit of fat protects your metabolic ways, your hormones, your insulin, allows you to be more sensitive to insulin, your muscles to uptake a little bit better. Thus, if you follow me or you're my clients, we talk about having what good fats in your nutrition profiling all the time, right? It's not to be fat phobic. It's not to eliminate fat from your body. That's not the goal. Okay. Now, white fat cells are not metabolically active like brown fat, correct? So they are much more stubborn, meaning they don't actually generate heat, lot less mitochondria within the cell. And it's why it's very stubborn, and it becomes more stubborn to move than like a metabolically active brown fat or beige fat, which would be a combination of the two. Beige fat is in between the brown and white fat, but white fat is more stubborn. So if you have ever felt like, which I'm sure many people on here, I just can't get rid of some of this fat, is because it's more stubborn. It's just not going to move as easy. It's not going to generate kind of heat and things like that as much as the brown fat. And so the white fat tends to be stored in like your waist, your thighs, your buttocks, your breasts, back fat, like on the back of your bra, all of that. Okay. So that's what you're concerned about. I'm pretty sure everyone on here is like, that's what I'm concerned about. You're not concerned about brown fat. So I'd like to ask everyone who is on here, where do you store your stubborn fat? So put below, is your stubborn fat in belly? Is it love handles? Is it the bra fat area? Is it your thighs? Okay, so put below, where is your fat, your stubborn fat stored? Okay, and those would be your white fat cells. Okay, so put it below. Hi, Tracy, good to see you. And I see lots of people popped in. Catherine, Roxanne, Penny, Melanie, Cynthia, sorry, lots of people, Emily. Yes, and Debbie says I was fat phobic before. Yeah, lots of women are fat phobic. That's why I kind of want to make sure that I emphasize it is important to have good fat and a little bit of fat in your body. Totally different if you're competing on stage. I get it. Like on stage, you want to be shredded, but most people kind of are not here for that. At least most people that I coach. This group is not a competitors group. I know there's a competitor group, but I competed many years, as I know. So you could be a competitor in here. I see so many. Wow. Lynn says belly fat. Kathy says inner thigh. Wanda says belly, bra, fat, thighs, and buttocks for Regan. Belly, bra, thighs, belly, boobs. Yeah. belly, bra, and handles, love handles, penny, back of thighs, low back. Oh, back of thighs, Kimiko. Interesting. Okay, we're going to talk about that. Belly, bra fat. So you know what I noticed? What do you guys notice? What is one of the most common fat area storage that you guys seem to see people putting down there? Belly, right? Like there's variances, people who have bra fat or love handles, but the belly one keeps coming up, doesn't it? Right? The belly, almost everyone. Marcella said belly, Pam said belly, midsection. We're going to talk about this, all of this. Exactly. Okay. So Wanda says belly, Lynn says belly. Okay. So let's talk about 5 ways to better understand fat gain. To be honest, when I was preparing this, I was like, oh my goodness, this is so complex that I'm like, to split it into 5 is a little bit like arbitrarily trying to divide this into 5 things. But I did it anyways. I just want you to understand that this is highly complex and it's not so simple. And there's a lot of things interacting, changing, and fat gain is not just one thing. It's not that, like, there's so many multifaceted reasons why you're going to gain fat, but I try to make it understandable for you, which is one of the reasons I know a lot of you like to listen, because, you know, my background as a teacher, it helps you guys at least processes it well, but it feel like it's not this simple. Let me just start it with that. Okay. It's not as simple as how I lay it out. There's more complexity in the background of it, but I'm going to try to make it as understandable to all of you. Okay. So the first thing is you need to understand where fat is stored will tell you a lot about what's happening in your body. Okay. Where fat is stored will tell you a lot of what's happening in your body. So let's actually talk about the locations of where fat is generally stored. Okay. So, so there is subcutaneous fat. Okay. Subcutaneous fat is the fat underneath your skin on the surface, right? And it's the pinchable fat, the fat you could pinch off of you. And a lot of this would be maybe in the like buttocks, thighs, upper back. And they could be divided further in layers as well, because you have different layers of your skin. But subcutaneous fat, there is a reason for it. It's a lot for insulation and controlling body temperature, gives you a little bit of padding protection for your organs and all of that. Okay. So a little bit of subcutaneous fat is okay. I'm not saying a lot, but everyone has a little bit of subcutaneous fat. If you wanted to have any kind of fat, a little bit of subcutaneous fat is actually okay. Okay. So that's the first thing to understand. There's then the next type, which is visceral fat, which, if you don't know, visceral fat means belly fat. Okay. Belly fat is the fat deep within the abdominal walls and around your organs. I'm going to go deeper on visceral fat in a little bit. Okay. This is not the type of fat you want. It's not like, oh, I'd love to just have a little bit of visceral fat. No, you don't want visceral fat. Subcutaneous fat, a little bit is okay. Yeah. A little bit of subcutaneous fat is okay. Visceral fat, no, right? Sometimes you can also have fat in special sites, which would be around joints or behind the eyes or in the bone marrow. They're more unique, and a lot of times these special sites are impacted by hormones and by maybe some medical conditions. So that's not like a major one. There's another one, which is called ectopic fat. Okay, ECTOPIC, ectopic fat. Okay, so ectopic fat is fat that is stored at abnormal sites within organs. Okay, so one of the most common types of fat storage, or not common, but you would have heard of, is fatty liver disease, which means that fat is now accumulating within the liver. Okay, and that can impede liver functioning, which, as you know, if you impede liver functioning, you're going to start to have problems detoxifying, creating bile, all of this type of stuff. When does ectopic fat occur? Typically, the person that's like 20% body fat, 25, probably is not going to experience that much unless they have some disease. Usually you're going to start to see ectopic fat accumulate if you're above, getting higher up, right? I would say 28, 29, 30, probably for sure above 30% body fat, because you now have excess fat there. And there's a lot of fat that your body doesn't know what to do and where to put it. So it starts to spill over, right? And it spills over into your organs, which is not a good thing. You definitely don't want fat into your organs, right? Because it impedes organ functioning. But what you might not know, those of you who are listening, ectopic fat can actually accumulate in your muscle tissues as well, and pancreas. But I want to talk about the muscle tissue, because if fat accumulates in your muscle tissues, it will actually make you more insulin resistant. And so this is something I talk a lot about: insulin resistance, insulin sensitivity. If you're insulin resistant, it means your body cannot uptake nutrients into the muscle to build muscle. Okay, so for some of you who are slightly overweight or a little bit higher on that range, you may have trouble building muscle, because if ectopic fat is starting to accumulate within the fat, it's not able to actually get the nutrients it needs to build the muscle in place. And this creates insulin resistance and metabolic syndrome. Okay, again, for those of you who are like lean 2022, I wouldn't worry, but it's to help you understand, okay, what are you thinking of? Okay, you're lean. If you're 22%, maybe you're like looking down, you don't really have a belly. Maybe what you're really wanting to do is reduce subcutaneous fat. Okay, cool. Or you look down, you're like, I have a massive belly. Oh, okay, Clarice is saying this. Maybe it's the belly fat I really need to reduce. Or then if you look and you think, oh yeah, I think I'm above like 20-30% body fat. Okay, if that's me that Clarice is saying, well, one, you probably have subcutaneous fat, you probably have visceral fat, you might be in danger of having ectopic fat as well. Why it's important that you do reduce fat. Okay, so I want you guys to understand why I'm sharing where is fat going and what it is, what the different locations that it can occur. Okay, so I want you to put below, for those of you who are listening, what do you think you have? You think yours is subcutaneous fat? Or you think it's actual visceral fat? Or maybe you're a little bit higher range, you're like, oh, I feel like I have like fat even in my muscles, like ectopic fat, although that one's a hard one. I know you can't know for sure unless you scan your body. But yeah, what do you think you have? More subcutaneous fat or visceral fat, ectopic fat? Special site fats isn't something you can really know unless, you've been checked for that. Subcutaneous, good. Jennifer, so subcutaneous, a good thing to know, is easier to get rid of, right? And we really work to bring down a lot of your belly and inflammation in your body. So subcutaneous fat is easier to take down. Visceral fat, yes, visceral fat, belly fat, Sharon, okay. Visceral fat is a lot harder. And we're going to talk about this right now. If you are subcutaneous fat, it's just a little bit easier to manage that. Okay. Visceral fat in thighs. Okay. So Aviva, just to help you understand. So visceral fat specifically refers to within the belly section behind the abdominal wall. So visceral fat can only occur more in the belly area. So if you have fat in your thighs, that would be subcutaneous fat, but you may have lots of layers of subcutaneous fat. Remember, you have like epidural and you have like different layers, like 7 layers of your skin. So depending how much fat you hold, some people may have fat within the first layer or two, some may have more, right? Because it's gotten more thicker on top of the skin. Right. So yeah. So just so you know, visceral fat only refers to within the belly, behind the abdominal wall, within and surrounding the organs. Okay. If you ever see a picture, it's actually quite disturbing. But you might like things like that, but you see the organs, like the internal intestines and like organs and pancreas, and you see these like fat things go around the organ. It's actually quite you don't really want fat to be accumulating there, right? So subcutaneous fat, Cheryl, yes, yeah. Visceral, Kimberly, both. And you can definitely have both for sure. But probably not the ectopic one. Yeah. Okay, good. Awesome. So some of you guys are kind of, just some self-awareness. Of course, we know we can't fully diagnose that unless you have a full scan. The most accurate scan is an MRI scan of how much fat is in your body. I know you guys are all, I'm only getting your input to get what you're thinking. We all know, like, you wouldn't really know till you were scanned right through. So, but yes, it's good for you guys to know. So we're going to talk a little bit about visceral fat. Okay. So visceral fat, specifically belly fat, okay? This is the deep fat that wraps around the inner organs, and this spells trouble for your health, okay? How do you know? So typically, if you have visceral fat, you will have a larger waist circumference, like just wider in your waist and around your belly. You'll tend to protrude a little bit more. And the difficulty with visceral fat, okay, is you could actually be lean and sort of overall lean, and you don't have like a massive belly, but you still have a little bit of protrusion. And you may think I'm not that bad, but the problem is that could still indicate the visceral fat behind the abdominal wall, right? So the tricky thing about visceral fat is it's actually invisible fat, which means it is extremely dangerous. Because some people have said, I actually don't, when I wear my clothes, I don't think I have that much fat. But when I went and got a certain fat scan, I was told I was 32% body fat. I think 2 or 3 ladies had told me this before. And so this is the hard part, is that visceral fat is not always visible. It could be, but it's not always visible. And this can be the silent killer, you have fat deep within your organs that you don't know, okay? Sometimes, like when it's protruding quite a bit, like coming out, sometimes that will indicate quite a bit of visceral fat behind, but often that would be mixed in with subcutaneous fat. So obviously you could, I think Tracy said both. If you have a mix between visceral fat and belly fat, then you're going to have a big, like a bigger protrusion, right? So it's something that, like, if you have a big belly, it does mean you have visceral fat, but it probably means you have subcutaneous fat there as well. You could be lean and have visceral fat and not know it. So you just got to really be careful. And, this particular statement with the being lean, I think it would speak more to my ectomorphic ones who are very lean, who've been lean most of your life. Just because you've been lean most of your life, it doesn't mean you don't have visceral fat. Viviana, if you're on here, she was lean most of her life, but we've worked with her so many months to get rid of that visceral fat that was below that surface of her belly. And so, yeah, just because you've been lean most of your life doesn't mean you don't have visceral fat, right? What's fat on the outside of the abdominals, Sherry? So fat outside the abdominals is subcutaneous fat. Fat below the abdominal cavity inside towards your organ is visceral fat, okay? So visceral fat, okay, is connected with lots of diseases. It is connected with heart disease, stroke, insulin resistance, and even dementia, okay? There was a study they did where they followed people for from 40 years old to 70 years old. And the people who had larger bellies had higher percentages of all of the ones with bigger bellies had dementia. And this, obviously, there's a lot of things involved with this, is that with your belly fat, it impacts hormonal signaling. One of the signals it impacts is leptin, which is related to hunger signal or fullness, feeling full, but leptin affects your memory. And I also talk about within my inflammation course that your inflammation within your belly causes a gut-brain axis, and it creates inflammation into the brain. So obviously, like, belly fat will have massive impacts on your heart, on your insulin sensitivity, and on your possibility of developing a mental disease, right? So this is why it is such an important topic that women and men both address belly fat. Okay, now there is a resource that I did a long time ago. It's called the FWF, Fierce Woman Factor, which actually assesses your waist circumference to your height. I know the ones who've been following me for a long time have this one, but if you're pretty new, you could put the FWF below, and we can send you that. It's just a 2-pager, but it says you need to calculate this and this to get the height to waist ratio, and that will tell you, are you at risk of metabolic syndrome because of the waist factor involved? Okay, so if you don't have that, this is speaking to the newer people. I know Kat's been with me a long time, and a lot of people have been with me a long time. I know that doesn't apply to you, but if you're new, then put FWF and we'll get that resource to you. And then we can have a conversation in Messenger in regards to that, because if you are at a certain percentage, 0.49 and above, you're starting to get at risk. And if you go like 0.58 and above, then you're starting to get into high metabolic syndrome situations. Okay. So I see lots of FWF, and we'll send that resource to you. Okay. Now, let's talk a little bit about, so I already said like visceral fat is dangerous, and I have more to say about that. I said, so visceral fat is deep fat. If someone says I have belly fat, remember belly fat is subcutaneous fat and visceral fat together. And then you could also struggle with fat on the thighs and buttocks. I know some people mentioned they have a lot of fat on their thighs and buttocks. Okay. So one good news for you is if you're someone who has more of a pear shape, okay, where you actually have a smaller waist, but you have a little bit more fat distribution into your thighs and buttocks, because that is a little bit more subcutaneous, it's not as dangerous. It isn't as dangerous as visceral fat. Too much of it is still not good, but that's a good news for those of you who are listening. If you have a bit of a smaller waist, but just a little bit more of like down there, it's not the worst thing, but obviously if you have a lot of it, it's still probably good to reduce it, because fat and more fat produces certain hormones that impact your metabolism and slows down your system and all of that, right? So, but the good news is it's not as dangerous. It takes a lot longer and slower for fat from the thighs and buttocks to move in through the system and kind of load into like the organs and things like that. Whereas like visceral fat is so close to the organs that it immediately like overloads the organs and creates like massive responses and inflammation. So because fat in the thighs and buttocks is a little bit further away, it's a little bit more paced. And so your body has the ability to kind of manage it a little bit more. It doesn't mean it's not stubborn to get rid of, but it's just not as dangerous. Okay. Something to keep in mind. So in terms of the visceral fat, okay. So again, like the visceral fat, when it is, because it's sitting so closely to the organs, it releases things into like the liver. And a lot of the liver has to manage a lot of like the excess fat and a lot of the, cytokines. I talked about that, inflammation markers into the liver. So the liver actually gets overloaded faster. So if you have a belly fat, you're potentially overloading your liver a lot more, which relates to something I speak a lot about, is your body has less ability to handle inflammation as it gets older. So if you have more and more belly fat, you are having trouble handling inflammation because it's impacting, overloading the liver, and you don't want the liver to fail out, but it's being overloaded when you have belly fat. Okay. So, okay. So then the other thing about visceral fat, and why I speak about this, because it relates to why I say a lot of things I say about what you have to do. Okay. So when you have visceral fat increases. So when you increase in fat, you increase cell size and numbers usually. If it is subcutaneous, increases cell size and cell numbers. But visceral fat actually tends to increase in size, not just numbers, but increases in the size of the fat cell. And the size of the fat cells increasing and kind of like taking more and more room, it triggers the inflammation response in your belly. because it's kind of like, it's just creating a like, you know how like canned sardines, like when everything is crowded and everything is just like, think of you on a subway train and everything is crowded, it creates stress. Like, would you be stressed if you were like crowded into a massive space and everything just like starts like expanding? So visceral fat is a lot like that. It increases size and starts to crowd all the space within your belly and belly cavity. And it creates a lot of cortisol, a lot of stress, a lot of inflammation. Okay. And so this is one of the reasons why I say that if you have belly fat and visceral fat, your ability to, again, handle inflammation and cortisol and things like that is going to be greatly reduced. You can't handle it as much. And then this is why you feel bad, you feel crappy, your body doesn't feel good, you don't have good energy, all this stuff. There's a lot happening in your belly fat area. So let me ask you again, the ones who already told me that they have belly fat, that's fine. But if you know, like, okay, visceral fat is a concern for me and I need to work on it, I want you to put visceral fat below, okay? Put visceral fat below if you feel like this is a major concern for you and you didn't know that this is actually so important to address, okay? All right, so that's number one, is talking about subcutaneous fat, visceral fat, ectopic fat, you know, different where fat stores and what it's saying to you, okay? So if you struggle with visceral fat, put it below. But I'm going to go into the second point, which is, I'm sure some people will ask this, is what influences when you'll gain visceral fat or just subcutaneous fat, okay? So second point I want to talk about is what influences when you'll gain visceral fat versus just subcutaneous fat, okay? So again, like I said, I'm simplifying. Fat gain is very complex and multifaceted. Of course, there's a part to it that is genetic, okay? Some people genetically are going to have a certain coding that tells them to store it more likely in this certain area versus other people, okay? But we're going to actually dive deeper into hormones. And actually, most things come down to hormones, okay? Because the question is, what influences when you'll gain visceral fat and when you will gain subcutaneous fat, okay? So, so let's talk about hormones, okay? So estrogen, okay? Testosterone and cortisol. These three hormones we need to really pay attention to, okay? Estrogen is, if you have higher levels of estrogen, you are more likely to deposit fat like a pear shape, you know, down in the hips, in the thighs, the buttocks. So if you have more estrogen, you'll tend to have a little bit more distribution there. And estrogen helps you maintain subcutaneous fat. Okay, so if you have a little bit more higher levels of estrogen in your body, you may have that shape and distribution. Okay, so you have to look at yourself and be like, okay, and probably more likely subcutaneous fat for yourself. But if you have more testosterone in your body or elevated testosterone, which will be in comparison to estrogen. So if estrogen drops and your testosterone is higher, you will look more like an apple. And some of you told me you look like a tomato or an apple, okay? So I think Cindy Hutchinson, you told me you look like a tomato on toothpicks once. And so if you look more like that, okay, a tomato or an apple, it means you have more elevated android hormones, okay? So it means you will distribute fat more to your belly and probably more to your upper body. If you ever go, oh, why do I have like more fat on my back and more upper body fat? That is going to indicate you have more androgen hormones and less estrogen in your body, okay? And this is actually what most menopausal women struggle with. If you actually look at most kind of aging women, they don't have normally that nice curves anymore. It looks more like an apple or a tomato on a toothpick. They just look bigger in the middle. That is very indicative of that lower estrogen, higher testosterone. How do you know you have estrogen, Debbie? honestly, that one will have to be just tested. Those are easy blood tests to get tested. Everyone still has estrogen and testosterone in their body. Even men have both. It's just to what levels, right? In what ranges. And so as you get older, and Debbie, you're obviously 65 now. And so your estrogen level would likely be lower, right? And this is why, Debbie, you don't technically like deposit as much. It may be lower. You have more that likes to accumulate right in the middle and kind of above, right? Cindy, yes, you did say that. Tomato on a toothpick. Exactly. Hi, Pratibha. Good to see you. And Corinne. Yeah, I see lots of people put visceral fat earlier. We'll kind of get back to you on that. Way too little estrogen in my body. Yeah, so exactly. So if you can already tell based on how your fat is distributed, just kind of where your hormones are. And of course, like I said earlier, there is a genetic factor, like there is a certain coding that is just going to be your genetic factor. But then there's also the influence of how hormones are currently in your body based on lifestyle factors, which I'll talk about in a bit. Okay. So also let's talk about cortisol. Okay. Cortisol is, I talk about this a lot. Okay. Is the stress hormone that if it is elevated and chronically elevated, it leads to deposit of fat in your visceral region, okay? It is specifically connected to visceral fat. Yes, women, I know we are all very stressful creatures. We all need to learn to handle stress a little bit better, have better mindsets, women are really big thinkers, and so, and planners, and we like control a lot. This is in general, of course. So women tend to have more elevated stress because we wear so many hats, okay? So cortisol, and it has specifically to do with the pathways and how it interacts with insulin and stuff like that. Cortisol specifically will deposit right into your belly. So what does this actually mean for all of you 31 eyeballs? Is that as you hit into menopause, okay, you lose estrogen, right? We all know, and your androgen hormones rise in relation. It's not that you suddenly get loaded with testosterone. Don't get me wrong. It's just that what is the dominant signal in your body? That's what's happening. If your estrogen drops, then androgen hormones are higher. So that means that's why most of you more in that age range tend to lose fat in your curves, lose your buttocks. You start not having the nice legs anymore. Somebody, Jody Peoples, that I'm training in transformation, she's like, I used to have really nice legs. My legs, I don't know what happened to them, And so, and then she had a big belly. Now she's flat. Like Jody looks amazing. She's just really busy, so she's not on these calls. But like, it's like you lose the nice curves because estrogen drops, so no subcutaneous fat as much anymore, but your androgen hormones are higher, so belly fat increases. And because your cortisol, you probably more stress, more things to handle, it will further exacerbate that kind of situation in menopause, because menopause is actually stressful, right? Like your body is changing, your body's handling all the hormones and changes, and you might have different things like, hot flashes, night sweats, and things like that. It is actually a natural stressor already in your body. So if you, on top of that, don't know how to handle cortisol, then cortisol adds to the belly. So you can see why, for those of you who've gone through menopause, you guys have often said to us in the messenger, and Debbie can attest to, or Oshone can attest to it, or Lisa can attest to it. Often the phrase we get is, I don't know what happened, but overnight I gained fat in my belly, which in reality, that's not true. It's not overnight. But it seems that way, that why is fat accumulating faster and faster into your belly? Largely because of these three main hormones. Now, there is one more hormone in place that I talked about last live, and that is that as you age, your thyroid hormone drops. And as your thyroid hormone drops, your metabolism actually starts to drop as well. And that impacts, obviously, fat accumulation, which I'm going to talk about in my next point. But if we were to go for the second point here, okay, when do you accumulate subcutaneous fat or belly fat? that is dependent on what's your hormonal signaling in your body. Okay, so again, let me ask you, how many of you feel like you need more help with visceral fat? If you already indicated, you don't have to indicate again, but if you're like, oh my goodness, like visceral fat is like complex, then put visceral fat below. Okay, all right, so number 3. Okay, so let's talk about number 3. Tracy said both menopause and postmenopausal stages are stressful. Yes, your body's hormone profiling is changing, right? So let's talk about number 3. Okay, so if you think about the first 2 points I talked about, I actually was talking about locations of fat distribution. Location, as in where is it distributed? Why is it distributed as subcutaneous? Why is it in your visceral? When does it become ectopic fat? When does it, and then the second thing was, why does it like where does it sit, belly or subcutaneous, right? So it was the location. But let's answer number 3. Why does fat accumulate in the first place? Okay, because if this can be controlled, then that means like there's no fat to put in locations, right? The first thing is, if there's a lot of fat accumulating, your body's hormones and things will dictate where it goes. Okay, but let's answer the question of why does fat accumulate in the first place? Okay, so the most basic answer, and it's more complex than this, but the most basic answer someone will give you initially is you eat more than you expend in energy, which is energy expenditure balance. You eat more than you expend, therefore your body stores the energy as fat. Okay, so the simple equation that a lot of people talk about of like energy balance is like, like if there's more coming in than you can handle, then it spills over, right? So that's a very simple explanation. There is some truth to it. I'm not going to lie. Like if you're eating like 2,000, 3,000 calories on your weekends and you're like binge eating, and of course you're going to gain weight. There is some truth, of course, to that. And our human bodies have evolutionized to be able to store. And one thing I was kind of put here is women are our natural makeup is to store, right? Our signals are to store because of just the way we are meant to raise children, right? We just, our genetics tell us to store a lot more. But why that equation is not going to work always is because if that was the truth, then women like on here, like Debbie, like Yvonne Heller, who's in the current FFF program. And I can think of a lot of people who eat 800 to 1,000 calories before they came to see me would have lost weight, right? And the fact is, a lot of women who are eating very low calories do not lose weight. They have still a massive belly, right? So that simple explanation is not enough. I would say it's a partial truth. And I would say that if you were younger, okay, like if you eat more, you'll gain, if you eat more than what you expend, you'll gain weight. If you eat less, then you'll start to lose weight. I think that it can apply to younger people, and it can apply to, young 20, 30-year-olds. That's why all of you who are listening, when you were younger, when you dieted, it actually worked, right? You actually lost the weight, right? Because when you're younger, your body has such an efficient system to deal with everything. Hormones are functioning optimally. Everything is on par. Estrogen is high. As guys, testosterone's high. Man, you've got everything working for you. So that simple calorie in to calorie out actually kind of works for young people. Okay. So if you're ever like looking at some, like think back to when you're younger, like it used to work, why doesn't it work now? Or you look at a younger person and they just like started not eating as much and they lost weight, it answers your question right there. Why? Or for a guy as well. Okay. But here is the kicker. Okay. Is when you're older, this does not work anymore. Okay. So when you're older, this does not work anymore. So let's talk about outside of proper calorie ranges. you need to properly understand food quality, okay? You need to understand proper food quality, which means macronutrients, okay? So why is this really important? It's not just about how much is entering your body, it is what is the quality of food that is entering your body, okay? Now, I know those of you who follow me, and Tracy Torrain, I see you jumped in, Cindy Hutchinson, who's been my previous clients, you guys have all learned macronutrients from me, so you know this, but we're going to talk about why is this extremely important, okay? Macronutrients are so important because it impacts hormonal signaling pathways. And this point in your age, in your life, hormones are going out of whack. And therefore, you need to be extremely, extremely good at understanding macronutrients and the way they combine and what they can do for your body. I'm going to give you some examples, and on a theoretical basis. If you want to understand more, or then you'll have to learn more about it. Carbs and types of carbs will impact your hormonal signaling of insulin and cortisol. Remember, I said belly fat has a massive impact from cortisol being secreted, but cortisol gets impacted by insulin. So how you eat your carbs and what you do with your carbs matter. What type of carbs matter, okay? Protein and fat, it impacts leptin and ghrelin, which is your hunger and satiety signals. It will impact how full and not full you feel, and it will impact other hormones like glucagon, which is released based on proteins, and human growth hormones. So if you don't understand macronutrients, your hormones are going all out of whack right now. This is why you have to be more diligent in understand macronutrients at this point, because it is exactly on the background of macronutrients is what is the signals that are now being released into your body based on hormonal signaling, right? So, sorry, I'm just seeing some location first. Real estate for now for fat. Okay. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And Cindy obviously invested into transformation program and muscle accelerator and did a 21-day anti-inflammation, I think Cindy, I'm not sure. But yes, so macronutrients are so important because it impacts hormonal signaling. Okay. And so let's kind of go further towards this. Okay. You want your hormones to work in your favor as you get older, not against you. You want hormones to work in your favor. So as I mentioned, with age, your thyroid functioning starts to decrease, which means your metabolism starts to drop, okay? And by the way, if you missed my metabolism live from last week and you want to watch it, put metabolism below because I spoke about this last live, okay? Put metabolism below. So metabolism slowing down means you burn less at resting rate, okay? So as you age, your metabolism slows down, you burn less at resting rate, okay? Which means you remember the simple equation of like you eat less or you eat too much, then you gain weight and all of this type of stuff. There's some truth to it, right? The truth is your metabolism has slowed down. So therefore you are like what you're eating potentially is not being used and therefore it's being converted to fat, right? So there's some truth to it because your metabolism is slowing down, okay? And number three is as you get older, your ability to detox your body to get rid of inflammation greatly slows down, right? Your ability to get rid of stuff in your body is not as efficient. And this relates to a lot around hormones and around like how your body functions. And most age-related decline, did you know, is related to inflammation in the body, is related to getting a chronic disease related to inflammation, okay? So think about your parents and what happened to your parents, heart attacks or, dementia or different, all connected to the overload of inflammation within the system. Okay, because why? When you get older, your body cannot detox as much anymore. And at the rate of when your body stops being able to respond as much to inflammation and the inflammation takes over your body is where you'll see major diseases come out and major declines in the body. And this is how people age and obviously get these types of diseases, right? We know that that tends to happen as you age. Arthritis means inflammation of the joints. Arthritis related hugely journeys to inflammation. Okay, so what I'm saying is that you cannot afford to mistakenly inflame your body at this age. You cannot afford to mistakenly inflame your body at this age. This is why I speak about you need to know your macronutrients and you need to understand how to deal with inflammation in your body, because at a deeper rooted level of all of this is that your inflammation goes up. It's going to impact your hormones, your fat increases, your fat storage increases, is going to be further exacerbating inflammation in your body, especially if it's in the belly. So you see it becomes a vicious cycle that just keeps repeating itself. And so with that being said, it's not like I haven't talked about inflammation and it's not like I haven't talked about macros, but this is a deeper scientific dive of why you need to understand your macros and you need to understand your inflammation. Okay, so for those of you who are listening, and if you're like, I struggle with inflammation, put inflammation below. And if you feel like you need to understand more about macros, then put macros below. The two of them are both very important, but they do occur in sequence, meaning I believe that inflammation has to be addressed first, and then you will get your body to understand the calories and the macros that it needs. Okay, so if you feel like, okay, I have a lot of excess fat, or I can't get rid of stubborn fat, or I have certain things that are accumulating, or belly fat, I want you to put inflammation or macros below, with the understanding now that what you put there is not just me saying inflammation, and it's not just me saying macros, is that you all know now that inflammation and macros ultimately impacts your hormonal signaling pathways. And those hormonal signaling pathway is what will impact to why you have more fat accumulation and where your fat is going to be distributed. Okay, so put inflammation or macros in there. Okay. All right, so I see lots coming in, macros, inflammation, Lynn, yeah, and Lynette and Lynn, Janice, exactly, and Pam, Lynn, and Wanda, yes. And Wanda, I know you are getting into the FFF program. She's one of the ones who pre-register for the next one. So Wanda, we're super excited for you because you are going to learn a lot of this, okay? All right, so number 4, okay, so this is important as well. Just I needed to make sure you understand the first 3, but number 4 is the role of muscles in your body. Okay, so I've spoken about this before, but muscles decrease with age because you're more sedentary. You have sarcopenia that naturally occurs in your body, where your body kind of takes away the muscle, eats away at the muscle a little bit, maybe not the most scientific term, but basically your body kind of degrades down the muscle because of hormones. Again, if I had to really be accurate, it's because of the hormones happening. So you lose muscle. You have less ability to uptake nutrients as you age, so you lose muscle faster. You're more likely to be inflamed and have oxidative stress, so you lose muscle faster. You are more likely to experience insulin resistance, so you lose muscle faster because the muscles cannot uptake nutrients. So everything says as you age, muscles are going to start to decline faster if you don't do something about that. You lost a lot of muscle mass, Lynn? Yeah, a lot of people, unless you're very intentional about it, you will lose it, and it goes faster and faster as you age, okay? So we go back to the principle above, okay, that fat gain is largely related to the body maybe having too much calories on hand, and it is unable to burn it. Now, you could be eating 900 calories or 1,000 calories, has nothing to do with total amount, but your body's not able to use it because of the hormone signaling, because of the things I spoke about above, okay? Your body has malfunctioning pathways. You could be eating and not burning it, okay, and therefore still fat, right? So the goal is to make sure that you can burn more, not burn less, burn more. So what does that mean? Number 4 is the role of muscles in your body. You need to make sure you really work at building a lot of muscles in your body as you age to counteract this entire process. A lot of women, as you get older, I know you don't like to lift weights or you don't maybe like as much of that. You need to make sure you are building muscle. You need to make sure there is not just movement, but real muscle breakdown and muscle building process, okay? So I always talk about lifting weights. Lifting and having resistance training is extremely important, okay? Lifting weights means that you are going to help your body, okay, increase hormonal signaling. A little bit of testosterone is less usable for women and more human growth hormone is being secreted. IGF-1, insulin growth factor, also gets released. So if you're going like, what is all these hormones she's talking about? I just need you to understand that everything comes down to hormones. So when you do the right activity and you have the right programming and someone understands what's happening in your body, this is how we're changing the signaling in your body, okay? If you skip your workouts, a lot of women I coach tends to want to not do their lifting weights or, they start missing. I want you to understand how important it is that you make sure your resistance training and your muscle training programs are in place and you do a good job of actually building muscle, not just moving the joint, not just cardio something, not just exercising to exercise. Exercise is important. So I'm not going to say that's bad. You need to move your body. Going for a walk is great. Yoga is amazing for reducing cortisol. Moving your body is beautiful. I'm all for it. Go dance. Clarice would love you to go dance. Awesome. But that doesn't help you build muscle. Okay. So I'm speaking specifically to a lot of women who don't like to lift weights. There is a bunch of you who love lifting weights, but there's a bunch of you who skip, who don't actually do it regularly. So I'm speaking to you. If you skip building muscle, your decline is going to be much faster. And that is because not only does your muscle decline much faster, your metabolism drops, your fat propensity increases, and then your whole body composition is you just have more fat on your body. You're not able to have the right hormonal signaling, right? So, and Janice, so loving cardio is great, right? Cardio is one thing, but cardio is not weightlifting. So we got to make sure we have proper weightlifting programs or resistance training programs, okay? And so how many of you, I actually want to ask a little bit of a different question. I want every one of you who are listening to tell me how long you've been working out. So I want you to put the number of years you've been working out below, okay? And I want you to put a second comment along with it. If you have put how many years you've been working out, so if it's 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 5 years, 2 years, whatever, and I want you to put yes, muscle gain, or no, not much difference, or no muscle gain. Okay, so put how many years you've been working out, and yes, significant muscle gain, or how many years you've been working out and very little muscle gain, or somewhat, or a little gain, or, put the two together. Okay. And so I want you to think about this, because time does not equate to results. Age does not mean someone gets wiser. My coach always says, age is just getting older. Wisdom comes from evaluated experience. So the same thing is you could be going to the gym time after time, years after years, but nothing happens to your body. So Janice says 10 plus years, no muscle gain. So Janice, right? Think about that. So like we gotta look at it. Okay, just because I've gone 10 years, does this mean I've actually built muscle? If that's not happening, you've got to get into a muscle building program. 41 years, Kimiko, muscle gain, but much tougher now. Yeah, Kimiko, you've been building some muscle, but of course, as you're aging, maybe we got to work a little bit more on nutrition or how you're eating, right? I know, because I just know you more personally. 10 years, Wanda, very little muscle gain. Thank you for being honest, right? So going all these years, and I know why, Wanda, we talked, you're in a lot of group classes, right? We talked about this. Jennifer, 22 years, a significant muscle gain. Thank you, Clarice, because she's in the program. So Jennifer, I know you're thinking of something. I'm not going to say it yet because you texted me. So that's exciting if you plan to go down that path. Kathleen, 45 years, not a huge muscle gain, right? So, and Marcella said 2 years, maybe, yes, muscle gain. Good. So Marcella, maybe you're doing something right. That's good to know. Kathleen, 45 years, like you said, and no muscle gain, right? So this is why we have to be really honest with ourselves, okay? Just because you're going to the gym does not mean you're building muscle, okay? So I want you guys to all have a moment of honesty. And if you know you don't have the right muscle building program, okay, put muscle program on there, because you need to learn to build muscle to counteract the effects of all this fat gain as you age. Your propensity is to gain fat as you get older, right? So put muscle program if you feel like you need better muscle building programs or hypertrophy, building muscle size, muscle strength too. So put muscle building program if you feel like you need more help with that, okay? Karen says, I've been working out for over 20 years. I've built muscles in my life. Good, Karen. And so you have actually achieved part of it. So this is just a temp check for yourself. Is what you're doing effective? Okay. And you should do this normally, because if you go for a long time and never check whether you get results or not, then you are having the definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So no insanity for when you get older. Your body just can't afford it. Okay. So I see a lot of people putting muscle building program below. Okay, I'm going to, we'll reach out to you. I'm going to go into the last thing here. So the fifth thing for you to consider about fat gain and understanding fat gain is obviously understanding lifestyle factors that can impact fat gain. So what do I mean by that? Meaning, I think the big things like nutrition, inflammation, knowing your macros, having good muscle building programs are going to be really core. But there are other things that could potentially impact how much muscle you build, how much fat you gain. And these are some factors for you to think about, okay? Yeah, Tracy, she just did a whole bunch of what she's been doing form check with me, but I got back to her yesterday and she's gained a lot of muscle. Her body, like I was just saying to you, Tracy. So she says 1 year with Clarice, have gained muscle, but would have gained significantly more if I'm consistent, but going for that significant gain. But your body looks so different now. If you look at your body, so much tighter, right, Tracy? So, okay. So several lifestyle factors that can impact fat gain, okay, so first of all, thinking about meal frequency. Do you eat irregularly or you eat regularly? And in those meal frequencies, how often are you snacking? All of these factors actually impact your metabolism and how things are operated. So why I work on 3 things in nutrition: quality, quantity, and timing. Timing isn't spoken about as much. How you eat, your meal frequencies can impact potentially like your metabolism and fat storage, okay? Another thing to consider is obviously your sedentary lifestyle. Do you only exercise once a little bit or 2 times a week? Do you sit for a lot of your life or inactivity, okay? Because that will impact how much fat you store. Okay, as you get older, you just have a tendency to store more fat because you just have a sedentary lifestyle. Okay, another lifestyle factor is sleep patterns. Do you get chronic insomnia? Tracy, I know that you do. Sleep deprivation, poor sleep quality. All of the things around sleep will greatly disrupt your hormonal signaling. And right now, at your age, your hormone signals are shifting very rapidly. So if you don't have enough sleep, this really impacts and can impact fat storage, okay? Because the topic today is fat storage, okay? So sleep. Another lifestyle factor to consider is stress management. How much stress are you having in your life? Like I talked about, if you have elevated cortisol, it promotes a lot of fat storage in your belly. So like, are you stressed all the time? In terms of cortisol, you could also call it emotional eating. Okay. How many of you are emotional eaters on here? A lot of you are. Yeah. Emotional eaters have a lot to do with stress. Okay. When you're stressed, you eat certain things, you'll want certain things to cope with stress. And this leads to excess calories or fat gain. Okay. How many of you are emotional eaters on here? I'm sure there is some emotional eaters on here. Kathleen, right? Kathleen knows when she's stressed, she emotionally eats. Good thing, Kathleen, you're on a structured program. She's in the current FFF program, but she knows that is a tendency. So that's a lifestyle factor, right? And sorry, Tracy, I'm missing some of the things. Yes, you're making progress. Yes, you're welcome, Tracy. Structure is the most important thing for you, Tracy, because Tracy, she's very open and she actually had an interview before. Is for her, I believe she needs structure and mindset work the most. And I think that's why, Tracy, you've been able to get back on track is structure and working on mindset. Ice cream when you're tired or stressed. Yeah, Janice says she has cravings. Exactly. So stress is a big factor, a big lifestyle factor. For some of you, another thing could be alcohol. Maybe not for some, but some people do admit that they have some alcohol. They go and have some fun, and some alcohol, and alcohol really adds the additional calories and creates inflammation in your body. And so at this age, it can speed up your process of gaining belly fat and fat. Smoking is not great. Smoking does suppress appetite, but if you're kind of like used to be a smoker, not a smoker, you kind of mess up the hormonal signalings a little bit, and it could gain weight faster from that. Certain medical conditions, so like hypothyroidism. I know some people struggle with hypothyroidism on here, and PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome. Those all influence your weight gain. So sometimes your weight gain is medical, but it has a lot to do with the way you eat as well, because how you eat impacts the expression of hormones in your body. Okay. Altered meal timings. Okay. So I talked about how frequently you eat impacts whether you have some right signalings in your body. If you have irregular patterns of eating, and I want you to raise your hand if this is you, you skip meals, you eat late at night. Okay. You eat like really late at night and have like disrupted eating, like you don't eat all day and then suddenly you eat at night. All of that greatly impacts how you store fat. Okay, so, and very last thing, because I'm just zooming through the lifestyle factors. Hydration, dehydration can often lead to you feeling hungry, wanting to eat more when really you're just dehydrated. Low energy, so you go for a sugary drink, but you're really just dehydrated, all of this type of stuff. Lifestyle factors like lack of hydration, lack of sleep, stress, these all impact fat storage. Okay. And so Penny says that's me. And Journey says I was doing intermittent fasting. So Journey's, it's not that intermittent fasting is necessarily bad. Like there is some good to it. There's a reason behind it. It has cellular renewal processes in it. But my question to you, Journey, is are you struggling with weight? And is there belly fat in you? Because if you have belly fat in there, then there's certain things that you shouldn't be doing in altering the timing of food, because that will impact certain hormonal signaling that will change what's telling your body to store fat and when to use it. Okay. So Marcella says, I don't hydrate enough. The last point here, which is about lifestyle factors that I just went through, seems kind of like smaller factors, but I want you guys to recognize that you could have good calories, good macros, and a good muscle building program. Everything I said before, but neglect these lifestyle factors and you will still find yourself out of balance and potentially not where you want in your fat storage or how lean you are. Okay. So this is why I wanted to make sure that the fifth thing was about lifestyle factors. So how many of you can you put below? Recognize one thing in the lifestyle factor that you know is holding you back from having a leaner body. Okay, so today's topic is about fat gain. How many of you can identify one thing? Put it below. Is it your meal timing? Is it you skip meals? Is it you drink alcohol? Is it you have too much stress? So put one thing or one or two things in the lifestyle factor that you believe actually is preventing you from being as lean as you want. Okay, so put it below what it would be. For some of you, it might be sleep, lack of sleep, all of that. Okay, so hi, Jackie, good to see you. And I think I saw Anna jump in. Hi, Anna, good to see you as well. So put it below. Okay, so as you guys put it below, I just wanna wrap up. Okay, so I think the biggest thing, like I said, this was very complex. It was actually hard to break it to 5 things for you guys, but I want you guys to understand. So this topic is 5 ways of better understanding fat gain and how to lose it. Okay, so if anything I want you to take away is I want you to understand that if you're super lean already, you need a little bit of fat. If you are in the higher fat range, if you're anything above like 28 to 30% and above, I would encourage you to lose fat. Location of fat is really important, okay? If you look down and you have belly fat, I'm going to ask you that that's something you don't want to wait too long to address. Belly fat is the most dangerous type of fat. Visceral fat is very dangerous. If you have fat elsewhere, you know, maybe like thighs and things, it's still important to maybe lean out, but maybe not as urgent as belly fat. Okay. In order for you to lose fat properly, you have to have proper hormonal signaling in your body, more than just calorie count. When you're younger, calorie count is really important. When you're older, calorie count is somewhat important, but more impacted by hormonal signaling. So if you can get really good at understanding how to control hormone signals, which means you have to understand macronutrients and distribution, you have to understand how to control inflammation. And the last thing is you need to know how to control lifestyle factors, so that your hormones can now function properly, then you are going to have a really good ability to control fat in your body. Okay. And if this is all really complex, what I will say to you, I see lots of people saying, yeah, sugar cravings, lack of sleep. Yeah. Meal timing. Exactly. Lack of sleep, lifestyle factors, stress and alcohol. Yes, Cindy, I know alcohol was one we always talked about, right? So you guys recognize there's things that are preventing you from losing your fat, right? So I'm just going to say this, if this is all really complex, the one thing I will say is try to understand that they have to work synergistically together. So it's the best when you can do it in a program where it addresses all the factors together, where it can address calories, macros, inflammation, proper muscle building program. And so this is a large part of what is in a lot of my programs. And I told you some things are changing in my programs. It's not being announced yet. I will announce it probably in a month's time because I believe they have to work together like this. Okay. So we are currently on the uptake of the FFF group coaching program as these current FFF ladies are starting to come to a close for their current program. So if you are wanting to learn more about our FFF group coaching program, you could put FFF below. Or if you just want to know more about all the different programs, you can put programs below as well. And then that way you can understand how we kind of put all of this together to help you produce the results. Okay. So yeah, I see lots of you guys putting different things why it's stopping you from losing fat. This is more for you to know and to know what you need to work on. Okay. Again, so if you need more help, put programs below or FFF below if you want to learn more. Okay. So hopefully this added value to you and that this was somewhat understandable. Like I said, it was a little bit complex, I know, because fat gain is so complex. So hopefully it empowered you to make some good choices for yourself. And if this added value to you, share it with someone, help someone else, tag one of your friends on this so that they can learn more about this as well. Okay, awesome. So I will see you guys next week for something special. Wait for the announcement coming down for next week. Okay. All right. Have a good rest of your evening.